A disclaimer now. The standard disclaimer of all information is for education purposes only. If you have any specific medical conditions, please consult your own primary care provider. And here's another one. All information here about human sexuality and reproductive choices is a gross oversimplification of what the kind of information that's actually out there. It really comes down to what is agreed between two adults, two consenting adults. That's a relationship. And so whatever the two of you agree on, and you're both well informed and able to make good decisions, and that's your relationship. So any attempt to put these in categories is bound to be insufficient and going to be inaccurate in some way. If there's something you would like to know more, then I'm probably going to not have the details you're looking for. There is a class that probably will have the details you're looking for, and it's human sexuality at Queensborough Community College. So let me bring up the catalog for human sexuality here, He105. It's taught by one of three people. They're all very good. You saw the word sexuality in the course syllabus, and you heard me say it a couple of times. So a part of your brain is going, "Oh, goody, we're going to talk about sex." This entire lecture is not only about sex; it's about relationships. And even with romantic relationships, sex is again not the main point of even a romantic relationship. There are many other things, because sex is just a physical act, and the real point of a relationship is the emotional connection that you have with the other person. So there are four characteristics of what we're really talking about then when we're talking about sex is an intimate relationship. And even then, sex is only part of an intimate relationship, because there can be platonic relationships. You can have a very intimate relationship with somebody but not feel physically aroused by them, but you achieve a lot of fulfillment in all of these other ways, these four specific other ways to each other. Okay, so intimate romantic relationships is just one kind of relationship, but there are a bunch of others, and you can see here. I'm jumping this slide because something tells me that most of you're all adults. You've been reading up on this on your own time, out of your own interest, ever since your first molecule of testosterone or estrogen was set loose in your bloodstream, all that many years ago. So pretty much I'm not going to say much of anything new, except a few things, and those are the few things I will test on. Sternberg's triangle theory of love is a major fundamental teaching point in any class about relationships. Where is sex in here? Well, like I said, sex is just a part of intimacy. You take the idea of this theory from Dr. Sternberg is that you take any relationship that's out there, and it's going to be somewhere in this continuum. So there are three main parts: intimacy, passion, and commitment. Now, if you take a relationship that has all three, then that's what they call consummate love. But if you reduce one component and emphasize the other two, and then, so for example, if there's no compassion, like very little, then all you have is really a companion, intimacy and commitment. If you have no intimacy, but you have a lot of passion and commitment, then that's fatuous love. Love here, like relationship as love, intimacy and passion, but no commitment at all, that's just romance. It's your trashy drugstore novel with no commitment in it. Pure commitment with no intimacy, no passion is empty. That's what they're. So I'm not going to spell out every variation. But now, instead of, again, don't think of things as being in compartments, being in boxes, and it must be in one box or the other box. Instead, if you imagine that where you are is this mouse arrow, And now you can just move it around this chart, this diagram, have less of one, more of one, and then you're going to, or that's the theory. That's the theory of it. So like Dr. Fusco says, he mentions it in his class a couple of times, but he doesn't rely completely on it. Because there's a problem with basement theories. Last time we talked about Maslow's hierarchy, and here we have Sternberg's, which also happens to be a triangle. Again, it's a model of what they think the real world is like, but like any model, it has to simplify. It has to pare away the uncomfortable exceptions, but in order to make everything fit. But by doing so, by leaving out the uncomfortable, inconvenient exceptions, then you're not being inclusive, are you? So that's a problem with these theories, and I think that's what he might say too. Okay, so strategies for successful relationship. Oh my God, is this lecture going to be like a Facebook article, like which Marvel superhero are you most like? That kind of a Facebook quiz? No, I'm trying not to do that. In fact, I understand that many of these things you've already read in great length on your own time. So what you can do is continue to read these and get a little more information if something is completely new to you. So anyway, strategies for a successful relationship. Each time I run across a slide like this, I'm not going to read it to you, but you can ask yourself, the relationship I'm in, does it have one of these things? Is it missing the other thing? And just use introspection and mindfulness. Remember the word mindfulness from, not last week, from 2 weeks ago? Jealousy. So that's the next slide. No relationship is perfect, and that's a good thing, because if your relationship was perfect from the beginning, it would just be boring. Okay, everybody wants a little excitement in their life, and the only way you get true excitement is unpredictability and also the chance of failure. Have you ever done something that you knew you were guaranteed to succeed? Well, then all the excitement will come out of that effort. Right? It's the chance of failure that actually makes things interesting. And remember now, the other person is not a computer program. They're not a scripted non-player character. They are a real human being. They have their own needs, and their own needs doesn't always match yours. In fact, they rarely match yours, but that's what keeps things interesting. So when you and that other person are trying to chart your way through reality, the chaos of reality, then of course there's going to be some misunderstanding, some crossed expectations, sometimes even divergent or not irreconcilable conflicts. But does that mean that it's over, or is there something you can do about it? Jealousy. Okay, here is the slide of jealousy. Is it normal to get jealous? Yes, absolutely it's normal to get jealous. And if somebody says you're being jealous, you can say right back at them, of course I'm being jealous. I don't want to lose you. I value you. That's why I'm being jealous. I'm being jealous because I'm not sure. The way you're behaving lately is making me wonder if I'm not good enough for you. That's why I'm jealous. I'm jealous because that other person I caught you with, or I think you're with, you may decide that person is better than me. That's why I'm jealous, because I don't want to lose you. What happened to my phone? Oh, here it is. I'm jealous if I lose my phone. So if my life is on this phone, I can't lose it. Anyway, yeah, I'm even that worried, that I'm even more worried about losing you than I am of losing my phone. That's why I'm jealous. So it's not only impossible to not be jealous in a relationship you really do care about, it's also kind of healthy because you know you're not perfect. You know that there are other people better than you, more valuable than you. You know everybody's trying to hustle the best they can out of life for themselves. So there is a real risk that the person you really value and you maybe even have grown to depend on may decide that they found somebody better than you. But the difference, and everybody can feel that way, but now the difference is what do you do about it? What do you do about it? Is your reaction constructive or destructive? Are you going to break into their locker and read their diary? That's destructive. That's going to ruin the relationship. Are you going to try to become a better person? Find out what it is that your partner is unsatisfied with about you, and then try to do something, fix it to become a better person. That way, if your partner leaves you anyway, you're still a better person. You know, win-win kind of thing. So it's, in fact, in terms of all kinds of emotions and reactions that are typically described as negative, you can use it as a challenge to to respond in a constructive way, not in a destructive way. Do you respond in a mature way, or do you regress into some kind of childhood response to potential loss? So it's okay to feel what you feel. What do you do about it? Okay, so in an unhealthy relationship, there's this wall of text. So you can pause the video right now and read this at your leisure. In a successful relationship, in a healthy relationship, there's another wall of text. You can pause this video and read it for yourself. The people who are sitting in class right now saying, wait, I can't pause it. What am I supposed to do? Hey, download this slide. Okay, I made this available to you for download. Download it when you're studying for the test, or again, because you're at a point in your life where you're kind of interested in these kinds of things, or unusually interested in these kinds of things. Go and read it for yourself. But it's not like this or this is going to say anything new, right? It's just going to remind you that these things are out there. I don't know who said this. I've been looking for the original author so I can give them credit, but I love it, right? When you like a flower, you pick it. When you love a flower, you water it. And knowing full well that a flower is in bloom only during the spring, it opens for a very specific purpose, and when the purpose is past, it withers away. And so just like that, our lives will bloom and then wither, but the difference is, did this person like you, which means they just used you for your beauty, or did they love you because, and then they'll show it because they're nurturing and supportive, no matter how you turned out. Men versus women. This is a photo of a copy of images, of pages from the textbook. And that's why it's all blurry. And so I thought of typing it out, but you know what? It's legible. You can, again, pause and read this for yourself. So these are stereotypes. Do not take this as women should behave like this. This is a social, at least from the previous generation, social stereotypes of what they think women are like or how they communicate. And here's a picture of social stereotypes of how they thought men communicate. And your homework assignment from this lecture, one of the questions is, do you agree? I'm not saying you have to be like this. I'm asking, do you agree? If not, like, read each one of these and tell me, yeah, that's me pretty much, or say, no, that's not me at all. I'm one of these, or I'm one of these, and it does not describe me, and this is why. So that's what I want from you. I don't want your compliance. I want your opinion about these things. With relationships, especially nowadays, we have to mention the internet and social media. You guys have, I hope you guys have been aware that every month or so there's been an article about how social media causes mental health issues, especially depression, also sometimes anxiety, for various reasons. There's the very latest news article was that several states are suing one of the social media companies for predatory behavior on young people, manipulating them about the way that, like, a drug dealer will manipulate children to become future addicted customers. And I think we can all agree that a little bit of that is coming on. So here is I'm hoping that by giving full credit, I don't get in trouble with CBS News, but I think they're only showing this from somebody else. So you've seen these quizzes on social media, right? Like, what's your favorite color? Which superhero do you like the most? And so this fire department, actually, no, police department, decided to put these answers and share their answers with their fans. So the answers are: stop giving people your personal info to guess your password and security questions. That's what these quizzes do. What do you get out of it? Oh, you get to know what kind of, which of the Game of Thrones characters you resemble. Okay, so that's very entertaining to you. But what did the provider get out of you? A lot of traceable personal information that can be used to, on the face value of it, target ads to you, but behind the scenes, they can now, there is this file, this profile of you that's following you across the internet and across time. It's following you for as far as it can into the future, building up this impression of you that you may not either not agree is accurate, or you may find kind of creepy that the information, the internet, the cloud is knowing about you. I'm probably I might have a slide on this later, but if I don't, before I forget, I need to emphasize this thing about social media and the internet. It's business, and business is about customers and suppliers, clients and suppliers, customers and sellers. The client, the customer, is the person giving the money. The supplier is the one taking the money. There is no way out of this. The customer is always the one giving the money, and the supplier is always the one taking the money. When you do something on the internet that's free, then you're not giving the money, so you are not the customer. When you use a free service and then it doesn't perform the way you like, you have no right to say, how dare they do this to me, I'm the customer. No, you're not. You're not the customer, because you're not giving the money. You're giving this for free. Well, if you're not the customer and you're not the supplier, what makes you? You are the product. You are the thing being bought and sold. Maybe not your physical body, but your identity on the internet, your eyes, your views, your clicks. You are being bought and sold. Somebody is giving money to somebody else, actual money, like a financial transaction is actually happening. And in exchange for that money, hundreds, thousands, millions of profiles are exchanging hands across the internet. You are not the customer, you are the product. So remember that whenever you do something for free. Once you pay money for something, okay, now you're the customer. And now that internet provider has to treat you like a customer, like make sure you're happy, do all these things. Are they supposed to protect your identity? Well, they're supposed to, but my observation over decades of being on the internet is that for many of these companies, their privacy policy is more like the song "Oops, I Did It Again." Like, we promise to protect your personal identity, we promise to protect your passwords, and oh no, we got hacked. Oh, sorry. All right, now we promise. We fixed it, and now we promise to protect your identity. And then, oops, we got hacked again. So that means that if there's something about you you really, really, really want to keep private, the really best way to keep it private is to not share it, but not put it on the internet. Everything you do on the internet lasts forever. But my provider allows me to delete my post. Your post is not deleted. It just no longer shows up on your dashboard. That's all. That post is still there on their databases, on their mass storage devices, you just can't see it. When you hit the delete button, all you're really deleting is your access to that information. That information that contains your post, your picture, the video of you doing something really compromising is still there on their hard drives. You just no longer access it. And so, how do I know this? Well, what about for the simple fact that a responsible and well-run computer company keeps backups, and so should you. You every once in a while, like maybe not every day, although that's not a bad idea, but every once in a while you should take all of your important files and save it somewhere, like not just on your hard drive, but as well as you can afford an external storage area, like an external hard drive. It used to be CDs, but who's got a CD drive anymore? Buy some kind of external hard drive, and they're less than $100 these days. Maybe you can get a nice one for less than $20, or a thumb drive. As simple as that. Just save your most important files in an external storage medium, so that if your laptop, your computer, your phone ever dies, like becomes completely irretrievable, you still have that precious information somewhere, so you can retrieve it back. So when you are working on your final paper, you don't want to keep it on your phone only. What happens if you accidentally drop it in the river and then all of your files are gone? Save it somewhere in the backup. So what about these internet media companies? Do they do backups? Of course they do. How often do they do backups? Well, if their CIO, Chief Information Officer, if their CIO is worth their salary, then they're probably doing backups at least every nightly, if not more than once a day, which means that compromising video of you in the bathroom was posted more than a day ago. It's on backup drives. It's always there. Even if you click delete, it's never actually gone. It's just your view of it has been disabled, but somebody else can see it clear as day. Everything you do on the internet is saved forever, which means a determined hacker or somebody with access authorizations can get at it. I'm in a unique situation. I was born before the internet, and I reached legal maturity before the internet, and then the internet came. So all the stupid stuff that people tend to do when they're young, I did, but there's no evidence of it. Not a single camera was there. Maybe some Polaroids exist. I think I burnt them all. Maybe somebody has a Polaroid somewhere in their own shoebox somewhere. But that's it. Otherwise it's just stories, right? Somebody can claim I did something and I can just deny it, and now it's one word against another. But there's no evidence. You don't have that. You did something stupid, somebody took a video. It's on someone's phone, which means it's on a cloud somewhere, which means it's backed up on hard drives scattered around the world, always retrievable, always there for a determined person to find. The next time you run for office or you apply for a job. A good policy then is don't share anything on the internet that you wouldn't want a future, don't share anything on the internet that you wouldn't want a future employer to see. More and more companies are getting the legal permission to request your social media accounts so they can browse it and decide, it's here somewhere. More and more companies are getting the legal permission to request your social media accounts for you to sign a document saying, I swear that these are my social media accounts and I have no other, well, why can't you just lie and pretend that those are your only ones? The thing is that now they have a piece of paper with your signature saying that's true. And if they ever prove later that it's not true, then they can fire you because you lied on that piece of paper. That's how they protect themselves. And that's what your employer is all about. They just want to protect themselves. They don't want to hire somebody who's going to cause massive embarrassment to the company, maybe even legal liability that far outweighs any kind of profit potential you bring to that company. I was skipping through these slides about self-disclosure, sharing your information with friends. Oh, another thing you need to keep in mind is that, oh, here it is, don't post anything you don't want the employer to see. Another thing is when you go with your friend to a private room on the internet, just like if you and well, not just your friend, this other person, you go with this other person who you trust and respect and care strongly about, and you go to a room in real life, like your own bedroom, and close the doors, shutter the windows, and make sure nobody's home, then you have a reasonable expectation that everything you say or do is private, confidential. But instead of doing it in person, you do it online. So you and that other person are at like different parts of the city or different cities. You both log online to your favorite platform and find yourself a nice little internet room and do or virtually do the similar things. That's not private. You have an expectation of privacy, but the problem is that everything you're doing is being relayed from node to node to node across the internet, and anybody who's sitting there in the middle can watch it. And the smart ones don't reveal that they're watching it. So what about encryption? What about security? What about code security? So everything is encrypted and with pass keys and all of that wonderful stuff. I mean, even here, all of the internet links are now HTTPS, not just HTTP, right? S for security. Anything humans make, humans can break. The purpose of this lock on this door over there is to keep honest people honest. But a determined crook can break any lock. A resourceful crook can break any lock. Even castle gates, castle fortresses, they are only there to delay an invading army. They are not designed to resist the invasion army forever. They are only there to slow the army down so that the country's own army has time to arrive in time to make a difference. So all of this encryption, it only keeps honest people honest. A determined crook can break it. So what's the best way to keep your information safe? Don't share it. Don't share it anything that you absolutely cannot afford to lose. I have some other thoughts about this, but this is not an internet technology class. It's about relationships. So, but one final parting shot at the internet before I go. I'm starting to sound like what's the term? Like somebody who resists technology. I'm all about technology. Before I went to medical school, I was a consultant at IBM, International Business Machines. I understand, I know, so most of what I know technology-wise is obsolete, of course, that's long ago, but I understand the principles and I agree with them. It's just that I'm also aware of how it can be misused. Artificial intelligence, be aware that there's this phrase, garbage in, garbage out, and it can be modified to say bias in, bias out. If you want to know what the AI thinks about your race, the color of your skin, remember now, the AI is built on the database. Its knowledge, air quotes, it's built on a database of what's available on the internet. So if you want to know what this AI server thinks about your race, just think about what are the majority of the articles on the internet saying about your race. Then that's probably what the AI will conclude. The AI is not thinking of you as an individual. The AI has no concept of morality or ethics, or nobody told the AI don't be racist. The AI is just saying, hey, 64% of the articles say this about that race. So that is my conclusion. That's the kind of things. So bias in, bias out. At where AI is now, you can only use it to help you sound or to help you write your paper. Those of you who are using AI to help you write your homework assignments and term papers, be aware that you can only use it to help you word things in a more professional, scientific sounding way. But you should not be using AI to get your answers. Again, garbage in, garbage out. AI, time and time again, has been giving results that are just wrong. How are you supposed to know? Because when you're using AI to write your paper, then you're doing it on a topic that you're just learning about. You just learned about it this semester. That's why you're taking the class. You're not an expert yet. So there's no way you can know. Here's a challenge for you. Use your favorite AI software platform and ask it a question about a topic you already know a lot about. I don't care what it is. Sports, your favorite storyline, your favorite lore. Just ask it a question about that and don't get hung up on like how professional and logical it sounds. Dig into the conclusions it's making. Is it true? Do you agree with it? And eventually you're going to run into one where you say, that's not true. If you're a Taylor Swift fan, ask it about Taylor Swift. If you love Game of Thrones, ask it about a Game of Thrones character. If you know all about what it's like to work at McDonald's, ask it about working at McDonald's. Eventually you're going to run into a conclusion that you say, that's actually not true. I lived it. I know what it's really like out there, and no, that's not true. So to an expert, they can tell when a paper is written by AI, because they're going to see it's very professionally laid out, it's very logical flow, intelligent words, which is a little out of character from this student, but okay. But then it comes to these conclusions, and the professor reading the term paper is like, what the hell? That's not what I taught in class. And that's how they know this was written by AI. All right, what's this link here? So this YouTube channel is Legal Eagle, and they did a story about this lawyer who used ChatGPT to write the legal brief. And sure enough, the judge who read it said, what the hell? Where did these conclusions come from? And challenged the lawyer in court. And the lawyer was forced to admit he used ChatGPT to write the brief. And that guy got in so much trouble. Do you want a lawyer like that? So that's cheating, right? So let's get back into relationships. Is it okay to lie, steal, and cheat on your partner? And of course, you're all going to say, no, of course not. But how many times have you supported somebody who did just that to somebody else? So you're kind of saying it's okay to do it to other people, you're just not allowed to do it to me. Well, then where do you cross the line, right? So to somebody who doesn't know you, they're going to say, oh, it's okay to do it to you, it's not allowed to do it to them, right? So now, almost all of you are going to think, all right, Peter Pan, So yeah, the golden rule, do unto others, et cetera, et cetera. But this is the real world, okay? You got to do what you got to do to survive in the real world. So I understand that. But here's the thing. Every time you get away with it, a small change happens to your personality. You may not notice it, but it's there. It's like me. Oh, am I near the microphone? Let me do it in the microphone. Here, I'm scratching the cover of this laptop case. Can you hear that at home? I'm going to stop because I know it's very annoying. But if I just kept at it all day, 24 hours, 7 days a week, before the end of the year, hopefully, one of two things will happen. I'll wear my fingernail to the bone and I'll stop, or I will wear a hole through this laptop case. That's the kind of thing. Every time you do one thing dishonestly and you get away with it, you get an endorphin rush through your brain, like, I did it. I made a fool out of them. And it encourages you to do it again. And eventually, and you keep getting away with it until you don't, and then you get caught. And by then, your personality is a lot different from when you started this journey. And yes, you go down a journey with every step you take in the wrong direction. Okay, so imagine anything you say online, even in a private chat room, you may think you're in a private chat room, but what you're really doing is having a conversation with this person in the middle of a street corner, yelling out loud. That's, you can believe what you want, but the reality is that the people around you can see what you're saying. Not your friends, who are also limited by the rules of the chat room, but I mean the other staff people in that internet company. They can see what you're doing. They can see what you're saying. Okay. All this, let's dovetail this back into the main line of converse of the topic, which is relationships and communication. Okay. Empathy, by the way, is how you. So there's the word empathy, and then there's sympathy. Sympathy is when you feel the same thing as that person. Empathy is when you understand why that person is feeling that way. Just to be pedantic, okay? It's better to have empathy to understand. It's better to understand. Have you ever told a story to somebody and it's clear they were not paying attention? They were on the phone, they were not making eye contact with you, they just took what you said, and then after like 5 minutes, you paused and said, well, what do you think? And they looked up and said, huh? Sorry, what? Or their answer was something so off base that it was clear they weren't paying attention to what you were saying. How did that make you feel? It made you feel like you were wasting your time, that you were bothering them, that they were trivializing whatever was going on in your life that made you want to tell that story. So no matter what the quality of that story or that experience is, we're talking about the relationship here. It made you feel like this relationship had just taken a step down, that they didn't really care that much about you. So flip it around. You're kind of busy, you've had a hard day, you have other things on your mind, and now this person who you do care about, okay, these are relationships, it's for people you do care about. This other person you do care about and you want to grow a better relationship with is now trying to tell you a story. How do you validate the relationship? How do you let the other person know that you care, that you're paying attention, that this person is worth investing in, not just using, but investing in, nurturing, growing, and then do these things. And these are all things, all parts of what I call active listening. Well, when I listen, I am being active. No, you're not. When you're just listening, sounds are going in one ear, and you're kind of registering it like with interrupts and notifications in your brain, but you're not really paying attention. Active listening is in the word. You are actually burning calories. You're actually spending brain cycles trying to understand not only the story you're being told, but why they're telling you that story in that way. And here are the ways to practice active listening. This is great for one-on-one relationships. It's also great for working relationships. I use this when I'm interacting with my patients on the ambulance. How many of you have called 911 in the past for yourself or somebody you care about? How many of you had a good experience with that ambulance worker, EMT or paramedic that showed up? Good. All right. So either it's because they were on the ball, they did the right thing at the right time, and they were very effective. Okay, that's good. But also a positive experience with ambulance workers, it can also be from they treated you with respect, they were courteous, they were empathetic, they made sure that everybody's feelings were validated. That's another way that can lead to a positive experience with the ambulance worker, the 911 response crew. And that's how I tried to treat every patient whenever I showed up. I didn't show up thinking, I don't have time for this crap. How dare you interrupt my rest time? I was busy with a movie. Let's get this over with so I can go back to my standby location. I never had that attitude with this patient. With my patients, I always made eye contact. When they told me a story, I tried to build a picture in my head of what's going on. If something was not clear, I asked for clarification. I tried not to interrupt unless they were rambling. Okay, when a patient starts to ramble, that's when it deviates. That's the difference between a patient relationship and hanging out with friends. When you're with friends, okay, let them ramble. You have all night. When I'm with a patient, I really need to get into the hospital. So when they start to ramble, I can start to guide. I don't interrupt really. It's more like I thought that was an animal. I was more like I'm guiding the conversation to the things I need to find out so I can take better care of this person. You definitely want to avoid snap judgments, because again, that trivializes the other person's experience. They're trying to tell you a problem they have, and they haven't solved it yet. And assuming this person is as intelligent as you are, and they have more information about the subject than you are, for you to say after 5 seconds, well, why don't you do this? You just trivialized their problem. You're saying, it's so simple, I can solve it in 5 seconds. That's what you're saying. And the other person, maybe you don't intend it, but that's what the other person is getting, that they spent days, months, years dealing with this problem, and your response was, why don't you just do this? They say, oh, of course, why didn't I think of that? I should have tried that. Then my problems would have been solved years ago. Okay, obviously they tried that, right? So avoid snap judgments. This one depends on really much on the context. Focus on the speaker. So this is all active listening. So has somebody ever done this for you? Somebody ever used active listening on you? If not, how about you start the cycle? Take somebody who you really care about and who also reciprocates, who also cares about you. Because if you spend all this effort on some casual acquaintance or somebody who is not respecting you, then it's a wasted effort. So save it for somebody who you do care about a lot and who clearly cares a lot about you, whether it is romantic or familial or friends or coworkers. It's pretty much available for anybody. And then practice active listening for them. Don't tell them you're doing it though, because then they'll feel manipulated. Nonverbal communication is not just what you say, but how you say it. Okay. Conflict management. Oh, God, conflict happens everywhere in our lives, everywhere in the world. So this is like an oversimplification for sure. But the slides are here just to let you know that there are these theories. When relationships fail, another wall of text. And here are some signs, but just like any other screening test, this is not diagnostic. What does that mean? Screening test, diagnostic test, basic science concepts. The video that you were supposed to have watched before the first midterm exam. Okay. I'm sure you've heard this all the time. When a relationship fails, then there's a burst of emotion and the temptation to do something dramatic, permanent. The problem is that these reactions are, to paraphrase another problem, a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Do something dramatic that may have very long-term and serious consequences, and not too long after the event happened, you realize it was not that big a deal. But now you're living with the consequences of the thing you just did. So resist the temptation to do something dramatic. If you are feeling a surge of emotion, no matter what it is, positive or negative emotion, just force yourself to sit down and at the very least count to 10, but also practice mindfulness before you do something irreversible. If you don't want to end up at the back of a police car, handcuffed, telling yourself it was so worth it. Because 5 years later, when you finally get out of jail, and now you have a criminal conviction, and now you will never get a white-collar job again for the rest of your life, you may decide then that, okay, it was not worth it. If you're going through hell, keep going. So that phrase is response to some people, when they're going through hell, their instinct is to curl up into a fetal position and wait for it to hope that it stops. Well, this phrase is saying, if you're in hell, then keep going, keep walking, so you get out of that situation. Don't curl up and wait for somebody else to fix it for you. So with sex, there's sexual identity, and in this LGBT plus reality, social reality today, or awareness today, then there is this awareness then that maleness and femaleness is not actually two separate boxes. You have to be in one or the other. In fact, even before LGBT awareness, people understood that in the male spectrum, there were many different ways of being a male. Not necessarily one was better than the other. It's not as simple and immature as like alpha male and sigma, alpha male, beta male, omega male, like a ranking order like that. That's something for wolf packs. And actually now sociologists and biologists will tell you that entire alpha male, beta male concept is a misunderstanding of a science paper, and it's actually not true in wolf packs either. So don't think about it in human dynamics anyway. But there are different scales of maleness. There are different measures of maleness, and then in the female box there were different scales and measurements of femaleness, and not one was supposed to be superior than the other. It was just different. Well, now let's take the walls of the box away, and you have these different scales and measurements extended and overlapping between maleness and femaleness. It could be that that's the reality. And so there is a biological chromosomal reality. You either have an X chromosome, you either have two X chromosomes or a Y chromosome that makes you female or male. But then there's the wiring of the brain that actually may be more of a spectrum. You don't really have a male brain or a female brain. You just have a brain that, depending on the wiring makes it more like a male or more like a female. By the way, the X and the Y chromosome, did you know that there are other variations of the XX and the XY? For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it's the genetics of the male gene and the female gene. There are people born with different combinations of the X chromosome and the Y chromosome. Where do we put them? So the accepted understanding of gender today is that maleness and femaleness is now on a spectrum, which is why psychologists are now accepting that a person can have like male genitalia but then identify as a female, and vice versa. Okay. Some babies are born without the standard or typical secondary sex characteristics. Some children grow up without the standard secondary sex characteristics. We're talking about like the development of the penis and the vagina, ovaries and testes and everything in between. And those are in the category of a disorder of sexual development. And that's as far as I'll go into that. It's very complicated, and it's very much on the X and the Y combinations and the mutations from, or the variations of those chromosomes and how they're expressed. Okay. The word normal, especially in the psychology community, is not politically correct because it's suggesting to those who do not fit the standard, the middle of the bell curve, that they are abnormal, and creates this negative self-image. Normal now, this definition I like a lot, is just the statistical majority of what people are doing. For example, if there's a mob running down the street, breaking windows, overturning cars, setting cars on fire, then that's what the most of the people are doing. So would you call that normal? Statistical majority is what defines normal in our society, whether we like to admit it or not. Which means then that there is a possibility that to be healthy, but not in the statistical majority, may be both possible. For example, with intimate adult relationships, there is a possibility that there is no such thing as a normal couple, a normal married couple. Because then how do you define what is normal? Is there a coital standard, which is a fancy way of saying how many times they're supposed to have sex? Like if you and your spouse don't have sex this minimum number of times, then you're not normal. Is there an orgasmic standard that both of you are supposed to reach orgasm? And if not, you're not normal. So there are these other standards that turn out to be inaccurate or unfair standards to judge a couple or judge a relationship. Other versions of sexual dysfunction, as the Dr. Fusco would have been better at explaining this. I only understand this as the medical condition where somebody goes to their doctor and complains about one of these things, and the doctor either works with the patient to solve it or at least refers them out to a sex therapist or a couples therapist, unless there's an actual specific like body part disorder, then they're referred out to that organ specialist to fix it. The problem with alcohol and drugs is that they reduce the person's ability to make wise decisions. It impairs it impairs, I shouldn't say proper. It impairs informed consideration of consequences. It reduces inhibition. So people end up doing things that in their sober state they would have wished they did not. They would have known better not to, but because they were inebriated or under the influence, that they engage in things like unprotected sex. So what are then the attributes of a responsible and healthy sexuality? Well, here is not really a checklist, but suggestions on the things you can look for. All right, so the second half of this lecture is about reproductive choices. If there's any place where the disclaimer, speak to your doctor first, applies, this is it. Because here are some concepts, some ideas, but really, if you are thinking of using a contraceptive to not get pregnant, or if you need help getting pregnant, you really need to talk to a doctor. Do not get advice only from this lecture, and absolutely please do not just look on the internet. You could do some real harm to yourself and to your future baby. Okay. I was shocked when I first taught this class that some students never got sex ed. I thought, how do you grow up in America and not get sex ed, sexual education in high school, if not earlier? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Well, you could be an immigrant and the country you came from doesn't teach it. You could be homeschooled and your parents decided that, well, this topic is not, we're not going to cover that, okay? You're going to do so well on all the other topics that you will pass the GED with flying colors. You don't need this topic. Or they just say, look, in our family, we don't talk about these things. So that's a couple of ways. There is, I will spare a minute. On the ambulance, we take new trainees, like people who want to become an EMT, and let them ride as a third crew member. It didn't happen to me, but a colleague showed me a video he took where he took the trainee and say, okay, newbie, take this list and check the entire ambulance for all the supplies, which is like fair to do, right? You should know where everything is, of course. And so an hour later, which is a lot of time, an hour later, the trainee came back and said, yes, sir, I'm finished. And then he says, good, tell me, how many BVMs do we have? We have 8 adult and 6 pediatric BVMs. Very good, newbie. How many 4x4s do we have? We have 26 4x4s. Sir, very good, newbie. How many fallopian tubes do we have? A what? How many fallopian tubes do we have? I don't know. Why do you mean you don't know? We can't start the shift without fallopian tubes. Go back there and find them. We're supposed to have 6 adult and 4 pediatric fallopian tubes minimum. Don't get us in trouble with the state. You hear me? Now do your job. And that poor guy went back there for another hour until he finally came back and say, I'm sorry, but I don't know what they are. You guys know what they are, right? So my colleague was trying so hard not to crack up in the middle of it, keep a straight face. And I'm thinking, how does an American kid not know what a fallopian tube is? So after a little bit of asking around, I found out he was homeschooled. Very, very conservative, traditional family. They completely skipped over sex ed, which makes me wonder now, does he know how women get pregnant? Does he know how not to get his girlfriend pregnant? So I'm starting to get scared for this young man. Anyway, if you are in that situation, or if for another reason, a completely unrelated reason, you don't know what a fallopian tube is, you don't know how babies are made biologically, I'm not talking spiritually, but biologically, here is a couple of videos. These are from Crash Course, if you've ever heard. Excellent summarization YouTube channel. Here is a couple of videos about human sexual reproduction at the high school level. So if you've never had sex ed in high school, might be worth your time to review this for your own education. I had to assume that you had all of this before I gave this lecture. All right, and then the next few slides are about exactly that, how babies are made, but in a very quick overview. So please read this. Of course, feel free to email me if you have any questions after watching those videos and reading these slides. As always, before you email me, please put the section number of the class you're in the email subject so I can jump right to your records quickly, get your answer quickly. Okay, contraception, not getting pregnant. Many ways of contraception. The barrier is the condom that everybody thought of. Everybody thinks of a contraception. And the barrier, especially the male condom, is the only way to avoid a sexually transmitted disease. All these other ways of contraception do not prevent sexually transmitted disease. Test question. Each of these now have varying levels of effectiveness, and I will not go into each one's number. Just remember that the most convenient method is barrier because of the male condom, and it can be put on almost spontaneously compared to all the others. All the others have to be planned ahead, like days ahead, weeks ahead, months ahead. But the barrier, you can send the guy down to the store to buy a pack of condoms and then come right back. So compared to the others, this one is the most available to be spontaneously available. Every one of these now has a failure percent, a risk of failure. They have an effectiveness rate and a failure rate. For example, there are about 200 million adults in the United States. So we're at a little over 300 million Americans in the census, 2020 census, and then 2/3 of them are adults. The Kinsey Institute, which is world famous for their sexuality research, has estimated that 50% of adults have had vaginal intercourse at least once in the past year. That number now, you have to take that entire sentence in its completeness, because there are a lot of people who never had sex. There are a lot of people who had sex way more than once a year. And so between all of them, the average is about half of them. So let's take, if there are 200 million adults and it takes 2 to have sex, then, and 50% of them actually did, then that comes out to about 50 million matings per year, like doing it once. Let's say use a condom that is 99% effective. That's still a 1% failure rate. So 1% of 50 million comes out to around 500,000 unintended pregnancies a year. That's what happens with math. With emotions, you put on a condom or some method that's 99% effective, and you think 99, that's almost 100, so that's like guaranteed, right? We use this method, we will never get pregnant, because 99 is effectively 100, 1% is meaningless, it's trivial, so as long as we use this method, we will never get pregnant. And then one day, you do. And the couple now is going crazy. Like, I don't understand, how is this possible? I thought this method means we never get pregnant. No, even with a method that's 99% effective, out of 50 million times throughout the nation, we still have 500,000 unintended pregnancies throughout the nation, which means it could happen to you. Just be aware. So the moral of this story is, when you are in a sexual intercourse relationship with somebody else, be ready that this might happen, that you might get pregnant anyway. So this is all theory. What's the reality? Center for Disease Control said that 50% of all pregnancies year after year are actually a surprise. It's God's little gift. The couple did not want to be pregnant, but they got pregnant anyway. Half of all pregnancies are like that. And there are 4 million births in the U.S. as of 2013. So if half of them are unintended, we're looking at 2 million unintended pregnancies in 2013. Okay. And that is a combination of all methods, both the high effective ones and the low effective ones. So the male condom, the one everybody thinks of when they think of a contraceptive, 98% when used correctly. When used correctly. What does that mean, when used correctly? Well, sometimes they put it on backwards. Sometimes it falls out. As long as it stays on, it was put on properly and stays on, then it's 98% effective, which means it's not even 99%, which means there's a 2% failure rate, which means this number, if everybody used a condom, this number could go up to 100 to a million unintended pregnancies, which is half of 2 million, by the way. Okay, there's a female condom. What's a female condom? Instead of the man puts it on, the female pretty much positions it in front of the vagina, and then the male inserts his penis into it. The advantage is that, again, it's convenient, it's relatively cheap. The disadvantage is that there is user error. In the college dormitory, when I was an undergrad, I don't know, social service person walked by, gave a presentation on safe sex, and then handed out free condoms. And somebody thumbtacked a condom onto the bulletin board, like right in the middle, putting a thumbtack-sized hole right through the middle of the condom. And everybody laughed and laughed, said, "Oh, isn't that funny?" But then the next day, it was gone. Hopefully, somebody threw it away, but there is a possibility now that somebody who missed the lecture, missed the presentation, saw a condom on the bulletin board, said, "Oh, I'll use that," and then took it off the bulletin board with a hole in it. So user error. Okay, spermicide is a liquid that you can buy in a tube, and it's supposed to kill the sperm on contact. By itself, it's only around 80%, 70-80% effective. However, then you use that in combination with another contraceptive, like a condom with the spermicide, or any of these other methods with the spermicide, and then you combine the effectiveness together, so you boost the effectiveness overall. A contraceptive sponge is a common place to use a spermicide. It's a sponge, but it's specially sterile to not introduce bacteria to the vagina or viruses, and it's soaked with the spermicide, and hopefully then it makes contact with the sperm and prevents pregnancy. 91%, 1 in 10 perfect use, but with typical use, it drops to only 85. Okay, I'm going to stop saying with the percentages. The diaphragm and the cervical cap, very similar. Here's a diagram to show the difference. Why would you use one and not the other? The doctor will decide. The doctor makes a measurement and prescribes one instead of the other for your shape, your situation, which means doctor visit. So the problem with these cervical caps and diaphragms is that you have to visit a doctor, which means you have to take time out of work. You have to pay the doctor's fee. Insurance may not cover it. All this bother. So it's actually slightly more effective, but it's such an inconvenience that it's not that popular. Hormone is the pill, and now you can either take in the pill by mouth, or you can have it injected or put into the body some other way. There's a skin patch version. The problem here is that it may fall off in the shower, etc. Vaginal contraceptive ring is, again, a hormone, a chemical that's soaked into a ring that then is placed into the vagina, so it's slowly releasing it and of varying effectiveness. Injections and implants, they are pretty popular because it's visit a doctor and then get it once and forget it, so the woman doesn't have to remember to use it. Very, very effective. Look at that, 99% effective. However, it is a doctor's visit, it is money, it is time off of work. So that's the trade-off. You get more effectiveness, but the problem is it's expensive. The IUD, very, very effective, but doctor's visit, prescription, and now here's one extra problem. Not only is it not autonomous, it doesn't protect you from sexually transmitted disease, but here's another problem now. There is a thing in the uterus. Intrauterine means in the uterus. And there is a small percent possibility that it will cause a uterine infection by itself. It's not really an infection, it's inflammation as the uterine detects a foreign object and it gets inflamed. And then for those that do, there is a small percentage that the inflammation gets so bad that the uterine is so heavily damaged that it must be removed, causing the woman to become sterile. So there is a very, very small chance of infertility, permanent infertility from using this. So even though it is very highly effective, it's only recommended for women who have decided, that's it, I have enough kids, no more. That I am absolutely positively certain that I do not want any more kids that way, but I want to keep my uterus though. So then they're allowed to use the IUD. The day after pill, the emergency contraception, is that it's taken after the sexual act, and then what happens is it goes in there, it interferes with the the embryo's attempt to implant in the uterus, which creates a massive problem with those who are anti-abortion, because the pro-life movement is saying that life begins at conception when egg fuses with sperm, which happens in the fallopian tubes. So if you take a morning after pill, for them it counts as abortion, and so the states that outlaw abortion also try to outlaw the day after pill or the morning after pill. Some of these other contraceptive methods also do the same thing. It prevents implantation. So the anti-abortion states are also going after those too. Behavioral method is when either is an effort of self-control. Either don't do it, complete abstinence, or to pull out, to withdraw before ejaculation for the man. There is a massive problem with this idea, which is that there is something called pre-ejaculate. At the moment of erection, when the penis becomes erect, a little bit of sperm still appears at the tip of the penis. So at the moment of insertion, the male is already putting some sperm in the vagina. So this whole idea of pulling out before ejaculation, not that helpful. And there's also the problem of willpower, in that some men say they will pull out, but then they kind of don't, or they don't pull out fast enough. The withdrawal method is possibly the worst method of all, with only 50% effectiveness, barely above not using any contraception at all. Not taking any method or any attempt to prevent pregnancy is about 50% effective too. So withdrawal is about as same as not trying to prevent pregnancy at all. Abstinence is 100% effective, but it's only as good as willpower. It's basically telling young kids, don't do it. Wait until marriage, or wait until you're older. And you all know how good that works. So pretty much that's. Okay, what about people who want, surgical methods? So the surgeon goes in there and cuts a tube. The cuts and ties off the tube. There's the female version, tubal ligation, and there's the male version, vasectomy. The male version, by the way, can be reversed, but very risky, very, very risky, not 100% guaranteed. They're both highly effective, but it takes major surgery. So now we're talking infection. All the problems with major surgery, infection, anesthesia, etc. When we last left off, we were at this slide. Well, actually, we were at this slide about education. Education is actually the key. Because of all these slides in this lecture today, it was really much high overview and nothing useful that you can use to plan your own family planning strategy. But one thing is for sure, if you do want to go out and try to not get pregnant, or you do want to get pregnant, then absolutely you should see your doctor. But in the meantime, educate yourself. So take a course like Human Sexuality, which is a great start. Of course, you will go out on the internet. I can't stop you. But all my warnings in the past still hold true. Double check the source. Always try to verify the information. Fact check as much as you can. And understand that there are a lot of bad actors out there. When you are preparing to meet your primary care provider, who will then refer you to family planning specialist or any other kind of specialist, you want to have various questions ready to go for your provider. And here is a list of some of them. And don't limit yourself to just these questions, but other things that are very relevant to and high priority in your own life and your partner's too, of course. Okay, so negotiating safer sex. Negotiating is a very multisyllabic word for something that's supposed to be happening spontaneously and charged with emotion, but you really need to have one part of your brain kept on the cool mode, always thinking ahead of future consequences and beware of risks. For example, just because your partner says they love you and you are the center of their life, it doesn't mean that they haven't cheated on you. So unless you have every reason to believe your partner, you really should insist on some kind of a barrier to limit your risk of sexually transmitted disease. Right, so this is why I needed to make a second half of the lecture and not rush on to the end. This topic here. I found that it is impossible to have a meaningful, clear-headed, respectful debate or conversation about abortion between two people who feel strongly on either side. And they can try, attempts have been made by other people in the past, and they may start out civilly and cordially, but pretty soon the two sides are just talking past each other, and there really was no hope of changing either person's mind. Not that it should be the goal, but at least to have both sides present their case in a logical and evidence-based manner. But it pretty much devolves into statements of emotion, appeals to the most basic of emotional needs is pretty much where we're getting at. So you listening at home may already have your mind set, have some strong opinions on this, and you're welcome to voice those opinions over in the discussion forum or the opportunity you will be given in the homework assignment. For those who don't have an opinion yet, for some odd reason you haven't heard much about this debate, and you haven't really, you are still in a information search mode. Here's some clarifications here. Okay, in the general public, the casual conversation, there's a word called miscarriage. Inside the double doors of a hospital, it's called a spontaneous abortion, because the word abortion mainly means the ending of the pregnancy. Well, it means the ending of something, but in the context, when you say abortion nowadays, they mean the pregnancy. So there's two kinds of abortion. There's the spontaneous abortion, where the body, either the mother's body or the embryo's body, has come to the conclusion that it just cannot continue on in a viable state. So either the fetus will not be able to survive, or the mother will, out of the mother's body, not the mother's mind, but the mother's body, out of some self-preservation mechanism, will abort the fetus. Then there's the induced abortion, and that's the one that the general public thinks of when they hear the word abortion, where another party, a third person, will do what it takes to end the pregnancy, whether in a medically approved manner or in some back alley, medically ill-advised manner. The pro-choice and the pro-life movements can get their definitions, their own definitions of themselves, can get pretty subtle, but this is pretty much the dividing line. A pro-choice is saying that a woman the woman has the right to choose what is done to her body with her body. She decides what her body will do. So if she chooses to have the baby or not, it is her decision and nobody else's. Pro-life is the side that says that that life begins at fertilization, when the egg has fused with the sperm and the two sets of chromosomes merge to form one complete set. That's it. That is life. So in the pro-life point of view, the United States Constitution, which protects the rights of individuals, of citizens, should extend to the fertilized embryo. Which one are you? And I'm not going to ask this seriously. I used to ask this in the homework assignment, but one person did push back later in the student comments, the class evaluation comments, saying that that's none of your business. So fair enough. And I didn't. So the thing with student end of course evaluations is that I don't get to read those until 1 year after the class is over. So an entire year went by where another 2 semesters of classes were asked this. But once I read it, I decided, fair enough, I will stop asking which side you are, but I will leave the homework question open to what do you feel about it, and I'll leave it at that. You are of course welcome to open a new thread in the discussion forums, either one, probably the news and social media, or you may, if you want, you can ask me to open up another general area if you want to say something about it. But the previous rules about behavior on those discussion forums still apply. You must stay professional. You must stay considerate. Your rights end when they trample on the rights of others. Those discussion forums is an extension of this class. It is not a free-for-all discussion comment section like you see on social media, like on YouTube or your favorite other platform. So rules apply. It will be monitored. I will read them all. Any comments, postings that violate the community standards of Queensborough Community College will be deleted. What about freedom of speech? This is a Queensborough Community College is a part of the CUNY system, and the community standards rules apply. So there was the law. Abortion rights used to be the law of the land. It was called Roe versus Wade. You know, it wasn't that long ago that everybody knew what that was, but I'm foreseeing that in the coming generations, as new young people start college, that more and more of the people will not know what Roe versus Wade was. So here it is. It was the federal law protecting the right to abortion, but it was repealed in 2022, so which is not that long ago. What does that mean now? Well, that means the Supreme Court said that the right to abortion will now be the jurisdiction of the states. So each state now will decide for their own state whether they will allow abortion or not. I should have put this slide first. Emotions run so high because emotions for the mother can run as high as emotions for a baby from either from the pro-choice side or the pro-life side. So now this is an interesting question. Now that some states are allowing it and some states are defining it as murder, because that's like a logical extension. If the state really does believe that life begins at conception, then abortion is the end of life, so they define abortion as murder. What will they do if they suspect abortion has happened? Will they forward it? Will people who suspect it forward it to law enforcement agencies? In any other murder case, law enforcement gets involved and then they do their investigations. They send detectives out onto the case, to the crime scene. What are the rules? Or what does happen when they think a murder has happened? So that's what this country is now going through. These 2 years since the end of Roe versus Wade. Center for Disease Control saying that 62% of pregnancies end in a live birth. Of the remaining, 22% end in abortion and 16% end in a miscarriage, which is a spontaneous abortion. So 22% end in an induced abortion. What happens if a woman who is in a state that outlaws abortion travels to a state that allows it and gets one, and then attempts to return back to the state that she lives? Should the state that allow abortion pursue this case as a crime scene? What can they do about it? Earlier in this lecture, I said that the morning after pill is considered an abortion pill by the states that outlaw abortion. So is the availability of the abortion pill, the morning after pill, count as child endangerment? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. This has now left the medical field. It is now all in the legal field, and it's going through the circles. It's going through the maneuvers and the steps that takes place whenever a very contentious and controversial law is being argued through the courts. Okay, a little bit about how IVF works. A family here wants to have children. They want to have babies, but for some reason they cannot. Medical reasons, mother or father, they cannot. And then they finally decide to go the IVF route. And what happens is egg and sperm are obtained from both parents, and then in the laboratory they are combined. So sometimes they've been called test tube babies in the past. Anyway, they are combined again and again. Well, I mean, multiple attempts are made to combine sperm and egg until finally an embryo is viable in the test tube. And then the one embryo or few that are surviving the laboratory process are implanted back into the mother's uterus, and hopefully that will result in live birth. This is very, very expensive. So instead of spending all that money to reimplant one embryo only to see it not survive to birth, in order to hedge their bets, what they often do is in the lab, while the embryo is still in the lab, they do things to make it divide into multiple embryos. And embryos can do that. In the very first divisions of life, the single embryo splits into two cells, and then those two cells can split into two more cells. So now we are up to 4, and then 8, and I'm not sure now how far it can go, but they can have many, many embryos split off before they allow it to start specializing those individual cells. And so what happens is the facility will implant multiple embryos into the mother's uterus, hoping that at least one survives to birth. That's like throwing multiple dice and hoping that at least one comes up with a result that you would like to see. Well, okay, that increases the chance that at least one will make it, but it also starts increasing the chance that multiple births will happen too, and that's actually the most common reason now why we have multiple births. Octuplets, which is 8, like all 8 make it to birth. There are stories of nonuplets, which is 9, and so triplets, quadruplets, also very, very common. Actually, what happens is they make even more than that. They make way more than that. So they try several at a time. They'll try several this one time. Meanwhile, they have many, many more embryos in cold storage, in cryochambers, waiting to be used in case that first attempt didn't work. And then they'll thaw out a few and try with that. And if that didn't work, they'll thaw out another few and try again with that. What if the first couple of attempts did become successful, and now those babies do get born, and then they have a happy family and everybody's happy, but now the question is, what do you do with those leftover embryos that are in the cryo chambers? Family planning. So there are some couples who do not want to get pregnant, and there are some couples who do want to get pregnant. Either way, it is an involved emotional process. Either way, it involves a lot of research, a lot of preparation, a lot of education. Family planning should be a service that simplifies this, makes these resources available to the parents so that they can decide what they can pursue what they actually want in order to achieve their own family. So deciding to have a family, to have a child and raise the child to adulthood is a massive investment, a massive commitment of everything about your life as a parent. So there are some very, very important questions to ask. So a facility like family planning is very important to improve education, as well as make resources available, be a network so that parents can be connected with the various other facilities and services that are out there. Family planning also provides advice about what to do while trying to get pregnant, and then once you are pregnant, what to do to have the best outcome for you and your baby. After birth, postpartum, after birth, 1 in 10% of new mothers experience postpartum depression, which is severe clinical depression, and sometimes it's gotten so bad that the mother ends up committing suicide. So it is not that rare. 1 in 10 is not rare. It is a very real risk, and all mothers should be taken seriously. Their statements, their feelings, their progress should be followed seriously by somebody who really knows what they're doing. For those of you who are thinking, how can a mother commit suicide? Doesn't she know that her baby and her family needs her? Remember from 2 weeks ago about mental health that suicide and clinical depression is not about logic. Do not try to argue logic with somebody suffering clinical depression. Clinical depression is when something is seriously broken in the way the brain works. So what this person needs is a psychiatrist. So you may have heard of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. Usually the name of the disease gives a clue about how the disease happened, but this name gives no clue. And the reason why is currently the official reason for SIDS is still unknown. There are some leading theories, like the baby becomes suffocated because of their positioning. So parents are encouraged to keep their baby on their back, suffocating, so avoid bedding that is too soft that can cover the face. Other things that might cover the face and suffocate the baby are recognized. So these are all extensions of the theory, the leading theory that it is some kind of suffocation. Don't smoke around the baby. You were supposed to smoke around the baby anyway, but here's one more reason why not, because the irritation of their airway may narrow the airway so much that they are no longer able to breathe. Clean the pacifiers so you don't introduce infectious organisms in there. Okay, so we're back here, and some families do want to get pregnant, couples do want to get pregnant, but they can't. They've tried and tried and tried. So absolutely see your primary care provider, get a referral to a fertility specialist, and they will try these things as well. And of course, there's always adoption after all. Okay. The last couple of slides is beyond the scope of this course, but I wanted to mention this because as a healthcare provider, this was very much on my mind. Everybody who becomes a healthcare provider is trained to keep an eye out for this. Any woman of childbearing age who has abdominal pain must be evaluated for a possible pregnancy. At the very least, up front, ask her, is there a chance you might be pregnant? And then great follow-up questions for that is, are you sexually active? Are you taking birth control? Now and one of the reasons is an ectopic pregnancy. So go all the way back to the top of the slideshow and refer to those videos about female reproductive system and how babies are made. And you will see that when the egg and the sperm join, that it usually happens in the fallopian tubes, and then it bounces its way down to the uterus where it finally implants. The uterus is where it's supposed to implant, and there it will grow a placenta. Sometimes, very rarely, sometimes the embryo implants somewhere other than the uterus, and that is a definition of ectopic. Ectopic means outside of place. It's literally outside of place. So any place outside the uterus the embryo implants is called an ectopic pregnancy, because the problem is only the uterus can receive a placenta. Any other body part in the woman cannot. And so as the embryo tries to grow a placenta where it's not supposed to be, it will, for starters, cause uncontrolled bleeding. Uncontrolled bleeding is a life threat. The chance of it happening is small, but the consequences of missing it is life-threatening. How do you miss an ectopic pregnancy? Well, the woman has abdominal pain, and the EMT forgets to ask, and then the paramedic forgets to ask, and the nurse forgets to ask, and the doctor forgets to ask, diagnoses her with, I don't know, food poisoning or like a urinary tract infection, sends her home with antibiotics, and she bleeds to death at home. Again, the chance of it happening is small, but in a perfect storm where everybody forgets to ask and everybody assumes it's something else, it's going to cost the woman her life. So any female of childbearing age who presents to the hospital with an abdominal pain has to be evaluated for an ectopic pregnancy. How do you do that? Well, you ask, for starters. But now, this is the key phrase here, childbearing age. What is the youngest a woman can be to become pregnant? I don't mean go finish the pregnancy up to the birth of a live baby. I mean just get pregnant enough to have an ectopic pregnancy. Well, a big clue is, when does menstruation start? What is the youngest age when menstruation begins? And when I went to medical school, we were told 13 years old, 12 years old, but there are news reports of it happening at 10 years old, 9 years old, and it's which means that any girl who is having her period, the first period of her life, by the way, the first period of a girl's life is menarche, is called menarche. I was surprised in previous semesters when not all the women in the class knew that word. I thought, just like I thought that all American students got sexual education in high school or by high school, I thought all women knew what menarche was. I mean, this was literally her body we're talking about, but apparently not all women know that. So menarche is the first menstrual period of a woman's life, and that is about when she can become pregnant. I'm not saying when she should, I'm not saying when it's right to be, I'm saying biologically that's when she can become pregnant, which creates this situation. As a appropriately trained and proper healthcare provider, you have a young girl, teenager, who is complaining of abdominal pain. So as part of your routine questioning, which is required for all women with abdominal pain, you ask, is there any chance you might be pregnant? And then the parent says, not my daughter, she's a virgin. What are you supposed to do? Because it's your job to ask, it's your job as a healthcare provider to either confirm she's pregnant or confirm she's not pregnant. But now you're in this situation. Well, since this is not a healthcare provider class, I'm not going to answer this, but this is an issue that's out there for real. Here's a little twist in the story. So this website is from the New York Civil Liberties Union.org. So it's not a government website, it's not a research website, it is an organization about individual rights that focuses on and fights for, advocates for individual rights. And here they say some interesting things about whether a mother or a parent has a right to be in on this conversation. So on that happy note, I am finally at the end of this lecture. So you have heard enough from me. Now finally to attempt the homework and the quiz. Remember, pay attention to the due date, and good luck on that. And you will see me and hear from me next week.